Good afternoon. We'd like to welcome everyone to the Board of Directors agenda meeting for August 29th, 2023. This is our opportunity to review the agenda for our formal board meeting that will be held on September the 5th, 2023. We have one modification for today's agenda, which is a resolution to set the date for a public hearing. We see that as read on M1 resolution. Board members, any questions regarding M1 as well as the agenda, consent agenda from items 1 through 14?
I have.
Director Miller.
Let me find it. Sorry, Mayor. And there was some resolution dealing with a contract for Oak Forest Cemetery.
Oakland Fraternal.
What item is that?
Number 14.
Oh, it's the very last one. Yeah, number 14. I see this is for lawn services, but this is backs up to a neighborhood, and the fence row on some of this, on this cemetery park is not maintained. So is the contract specifically for cutting the grass, or is there any way that we can get them to, or we can look at maintaining the walls and the fences where it's completely overgrown over there?
Director Miller, this is for the cemetery property. I'll visit with them to see if there's an opportunity to extend it, but I will tell you it would cost more money at this point.
Yeah, I would like to see how much more money that would cost, just because of the fences in the wall is just completely overgrown. It's in a neighborhood where fence borders it. I think it's a Goodwill neighborhood. It's not a very attractive looking area, but I can understand maybe the covering for some of the fences, but along the walls and things, it's really overgrown. So just take a look at it to see if maybe in the future, if you can't amend this one, to have them at least maintain that fence row too.
Will do.
Thank you. That's all I had, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Miller. Director Adcock.
Yes, Mr. Moore, on the same item, is that the same company that's doing University Avenue?
Don't think so. No, it's not.
It's not the same company? Okay, thank you.
Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor, on the same item. And I don't know if Director Adcock was referring to the ownership of the one in Hensley. I know we've had a number of problems with them as well as the one across the street, having them go before the cemetery board. So, Ms. Moore, would this item that Director Miller referenced, would this be a responsibility in terms of the maintenance and the upkeep of the owners of that cemetery?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
The item that Director Miller referenced, would this be a responsibility in terms of the maintenance of the ownership of that cemetery? I only bring it up because of Director Adcock's question about the one in Hensley. We've had problems with them. They own that one as well as the one across the street. They've been before the cemetery board before. There's been a lot of concern around the upkeep and maintenance.
It's separate.
So that would be separate.
Right.
So the item that the issue that Director Miller referenced in terms of this contract, there won't be any increase to what we're approving tonight with respect to the item he brought up.
Well, I mean, we're going to have to go back and visit with them because he was referencing outside of the fence area. But, so I don't, we're just going to have to, I mean, we might have to amend this before September 5th.
So that is a possibility, was, I guess his question
Right.
was, it would it cost? Okay, thank you.
Director Wyrick?
I just wanted to follow up on Director Miller's comments about the Oakland Cemetery. I'm the liaison for this group, and I was aware there was a contract that was coming up, but I wasn't aware of what the scope of it was. So I'm sure that they would want to comply with the neighbors and have a good look for the cemetery. So I'm going to let Bruce take the lead, but I will also talk to the snakes.
Yeah, if you visit with Ms. Coleman and I'll call her tomorrow too.
Yeah. We'll get it together one way or another. But thank you for bringing that up.
Director Phillips?
Thank you, Mayor. This is in relation to number 7. I think I saw, is it Major Tyrell?
Major Tyrell.
If he could approach Major. And this is for the benefit of the public. I've attended all but one of our community meetings, and I know there's been conversations about our investment in our police department. So, Major Tyrell, can you educate us on what these cameras will do and how they will help the police department going forward?
Yes, sir. So since about 2012, the department has operated around 50 crime cameras, which were city-owned cameras that were placed throughout the city. Those, 12-year-old cameras or 13-year-old cameras now are really approaching end of life, and they're just not usable anymore. So we're replacing some, and we're going to refurbish some. So this request for 30 additional cameras will add to it. But it will significantly increase our footprint, especially in the River Market area and the Soma area, and then some of our parks that we worked with Director Couch and identified as having issues with B&Es. We think we can do a better job of improving the security in the parks through some video surveillance.
And how does this play into the real-time crime?
These are all part of the Real-Time Crime Center. These needs got identified through the Real-Time Crime Center. So, it wasn't long ago we increased our flock cameras through the Real-Time Crime Center, and now this is just the video cameras that we utilize are being increased.
Okay. Thank you, Major Tyrell.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Mayor. Just want the public to be aware of all we're doing to support our police officers.
Director Computers?
Bruce, can you, on number 15, can you tell me where the land is and what the medical school is planning on doing?
Yeah, this is the, if you remember, when we did Pine and Cedar and made the trade there. So this will allow them to build a hotel on that property.
And will it infringe on the library or the zoo?
No, not at all. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moore, and also Director Computers and members of the board. It just goes to show the amount of activity that's happened since we made that investment. I believe, Mr. Moore, about $3.5 million to do a lot of that reconfiguration. And since that time, we've seen the investment of energy plant that's gone there, more cooperation between UMS and the community, now to have a hotel as well. So we're seeing a lot of not only community impact, but economic impact. And so we're definitely grateful for our relationship with UMS under the leadership of Chancellor Patterson.
And Mayor, can I speak, just dovetail what you said on that? When we started 12th Street back in August 2008, and I presented the conceptual framework to Mr. Moore, His only challenge to me was to find matching funding from institutional partners to match what the city put in. And UMS, through Vice Chancellor at the time, Tom Butler, committed to funding our 12th Street work. He was on the steering committee, and they were involved with a lot of what we're trying to do south of 630 and the Pine and Cedar work north of 630. That was part of the 12th Street work that we had done through a Jumpstart grant. And even though the northern boundaries of 12th Street corridor is 630, they've been really, really, as you said, Mayor, been good partners, good stewards of their resources and reaching out and making plain and clear and making sure that the people in that community are fully aware that they're trying to enhance the community, not gentrify the community. So I think it was important that you make that real clear. They've been real good community partners since August 8, 2008.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Director Hines, we have you up next, or would you want us to go to Director Webb?
I can ask the questions on 8. I guess this will be for our public works, sewers management, our resurfacing.
Manish?
So in Niche, is this a renewal of an existing contract with McClellan, or is this a new contract going forward?
This is a new contract, sir.
Okay. I'd like a copy of the old contract, and do we have a new contract in place yet, or is that?
It's not in place yet, sir.
I'd still like a copy of the old
Yes, sir.
contract, and as soon as the new one's executed, I'd like a copy of that as well.
Yes, sir.
I want to know exactly what we're paying for.
Okay.
Because as I see sections of Ward 5 that have been overlaid over the years, they do not seem to be holding up. And if we're paying an engineering firm $100,000 to make sure that the contractors are putting down what they're supposed to be putting down, I want to find out why we're seeing roads not hold up as well.
Yes, sir.
Because we're paying an awful lot of money to make sure that our contractors are doing the job the right way. Thank you.
I'll get you a copy of the contract. Thank you, sir.
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's another follow-up to number 15, and I too appreciate the relationship with UAMS. I'm having trouble visualizing exactly where this is, and I'm wondering if we could get, like maybe find the closest building.
Mr. Golden, or?
I'm Wes Lacewell, Director of Real Estate Services for UAMS. We can get that to you. Would you prefer just an email representation of that for? Okay. I do want to correct one thing. These two lots we're referring to are adjacent to the hotel spot. We're going to be coming to this board later in a couple of months to actually discuss a much more detailed plan about that hotel site. What's that? Oh, where the? Okay. Well, the hotel developer is going to have a much more detailed plan for the city to show you, and it'll be a lot better visualization for you to review.
Yes, but I think what I'm hearing from Director Webb, before she votes, she would like to put some context and/or eyes to it.
Absolutely.
If you guys can at least get an email to Director Webb and also the other members of the board.
Sure will.
All right.
So currently, within that design, Director Webb, if you notice the new parking deck that we have, it'll be adjacent to that parking deck. It'll be north of those two lots. Those two lots will actually become green space, and they'll help with the curvature design that we're going to put in that space, and that's where they'll be located. So currently, there's a gravel lot there, and it should be. We're currently looking at that space being the site.
Great.
Thank you.
Director.
These two lots are 700 feet south of where the hotel site will be, but it acts as a green space to help the whole campus.
Director Computers.
While you don't run off. Being the old person here and I can't remember, Joan, when the last time, years ago, Bruce, you'll remember, when we talked about Pine and Cedar, that the medical school was not going to encroach on that, on the neighborhood to the east side. And now we've got the street diverted. And I know, Ken, you're in favor of this, but what's this going to do to a neighborhood? We have a hotel there when the understanding was that we weren't going to, that the medical school was not going to move east any further than that. And now we've moved the street, we put a power plant on the east side of that, and we've taken out, I don't know how many homes that were there. And I'm kind of like Kathy, I want to see a map of what we're doing and why we're doing it, because if the initial.
It's up here. It's right there.
And Dean, I didn't mean if anyone thought, Mayor, I'm sorry, my comments of what they've done with us with 12th Street is indicative of how I'm gonna vote. That's incorrect. My positive comments about their work in helping us improve south of 630 and connecting that to north of 630 is by no means indicative, no way suggests I'm gonna vote for this.
Well, I think we need to be cognizant of what we said, 20 years ago?
25.
And what we're doing now, and every time we do this, we're making it harder for residential areas north of 630. So I would want not to leave this on, it's not on the consent agenda, but I would make sure that we really talk about this and have people here that go over the agreement we had before Cam got here and anything like that, because we just keep moving a little bit further east and we keep putting more things in and we make it harder for having residential properties and neighborhoods in that area.
So Director Kemperis, I think Director Webb and I, we've had this conversation once before, and that currently UAMS does not have major plans to go farther than UAMS Boulevard right now. Is that UAMS is strategically trying to utilize the footprint that we currently have within this space to maximize wherever facilities we have. This hotel is designed to help long-term care families of cancer patients. We're expecting an increase of new cancer families coming to the area, and we want them to be able to stay close to the hotel. In addition to that, Arkansas Children's Hospital will be able to utilize some of the space. We're in talks to them about that, and potentially the third group was
The Hope Lodge Cancer.
the Hope Lodge Cancer.
Yes, sir, and I understand the need for the hospital. It's not the purpose that I'm talking about. It's just that we keep saying we're not going to go further than this, and we keep going further east every time. And I feel sure we'll approve this, but I think someone needs to go back and look at the original things y'all said about Pine and Cedar.
Okay.
And that it wouldn't be moved, and now you go down and you have to make that funny turn to go around it.
Yeah, no.
And it is shoehorned in there, the power plant. And so when we talk about this next week, I would hope that someone's there looking at what the school had said earlier and what they weren't going to do and why we're doing what we're doing.
Yes, we appreciate the input, and we'll definitely see if we can find that agreement.
Thank you.
I guess some clarity, Director Kemperis. It's currently on consent. Are you wanting to pull it off consent?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
It's not on consent. No,
no, never mind, I apologize.
It's
no.
With that being said, are you asking, because I want to make certain,
I think that someone needs to go back and say what the school said they were going to do before and what's happened and the rationale for doing it and what this is going to do to Ken's area as far
and
as.
how long of a presentation do you want? I mean, you're talking about 20 years and I'm really just trying from the short presentation. Okay.
I mean, it's just going back on what we said, and Bruce would know all about that.
All right, thank you. Director Hines, then Director Adcock.
So it seems we have some confusion, and I guess this question is for Tom. Where is the rehearing of the, what am I trying to say? The rehearing of the Morgan Cemetery Road PDC?
It's not.
It's not on our agenda, that's why I'm referencing
Agenda.
it.
This is,
Because I haven't, the developer on that sent out notifications that it was going to be September 5th. And I expected it to be, so I don't know if it's a public hearing or if it's just a ordinance.
oh,
I don't.
yes, yeah, that needs,
And these were all sent to staff, and I'm trying to find where the disconnect is when we've been talking about this, I know, for 3 weeks.
right, the disconnect is with me, and I was out of town last week and ended up having to extend the stay. What the board doesn't know is that previously the board has approved a particular zoning matter for Cemetery Road. The ordinance that the board has passed says that notice will be given to all of the objectors, and planning did not do that, so the developers have done that because the issue's been raised as a means of trying to set aside the board's earlier position, and this is just to clean that up, and that will be on this agenda. I will get with the manager and the secretary and the city clerk on that.
Okay, I just want to make sure it gets added because the notifications have been sent to the objectors, and that was the date, so.
Right.
And it looks like notification was sent to us on the 25th of August to ask us to add it to the agenda. So I just want to make sure it gets added as a modification for next week. Thank you.
Director Adcock?
Yes, mine is also on Dr. Campiris's and Vice Mayor Webb's. Mr. Moore, would you please make sure that all of the neighborhood has been notified about this item? Because like Dean said, we made big promises whenever we asked for the last zoning over there, and I want to make sure that everyone has been notified in that subdivision there. I don't know if they have a listed neighborhood association, but if they don't, I want to make sure that we have sent everyone in that area a notice of this. And they may all be in favor of it, but I want to make sure we follow the promises that we made 20, 25 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adcock. Director Campiris, is your hand still up?
No, I'm sorry.
Director Hines, is your hand still up?
Yeah, mine's something that's not on the agenda, so yeah, but I want to discuss before we go to our topic. Just on, I have a couple of things to ask staff for.
Sure thing.
We're ready. Tom and Bruce, I just got an email as we were coming in here from the developers on Carter Lane. We had a meeting with them last week. You guys had a meeting with staff members, and we have yet to respond to them. I would appreciate something to them tomorrow morning. If we can't respond to them in the morning, I want to know why. Please. The other thing is, Mayor, I don't know if anybody from finance is here, but it's been come to my attention that we have not published our CAFR, and we seem to be in violation of State Code 1458-302 that requires it to be published 6 months from the year end. So I need an answer as to why we haven't published our CAFR yet for the public view.
As we shared, I believe a few weeks ago, due to staffing, the team is focused on the audit, and we had to get a number of different things pushed back on those schedules. All of that's, we're aware of all of that.
No, I know we're aware of it, but Tom, is your opinion as an attorney, do the courts how do they view excuses when it's a state statute?
They don't, because it's not the first time in our city's history. So we're doing due to
We have an
staffing?
ETA on when that will be produced. I've got constituents and folks asking me about it.
Sure, you can let them know as soon as we get the audit done. But if any of them would like to be helpful, we'll love that as well. We're dealing with some low staff, and I think we're all aware of that.
Yeah, okay.
Please ask them to contact me if they would like to.
Certainly will. I just am at a shortness as I've gone through some public hearings, and lately it seems to be that I only hear excuses for why we're not getting things accomplished lately. It's very frustrating as an elected official. It's frustrating to my constituents. It's frustrating to the business owners and businesses that we regulate as a city, that it's excuse after excuse, and frankly, I'm tired of it. And this lies at the head of your administration, Mayor, because most of the department heads report to you that I'm getting complaints about, and I've shared this with you. My frustration level is at a fever pitch, and we heard it last night in the tax hearings, is that we should prove that we can do what we need to do with the money we're already getting before we go and ask the taxpayers to give us more money, to not do anything with it except give us excuses for why we can't get things done.
And Director Hines, I think you are all aware, as the board is aware, the workforce shortage we have in our finance department. We're staffing up, and that same finance department has consistently received awards for their work. So I don't know what information you're saying that you haven't gotten besides anything that we've already told you, i.e. the audit. The audit is the main priority, and we continue to receive awards. So please don't share any misinformation in regards to your city department as it relates to finance. So we continue to do very well as stewards of this city and continue to receive awards. That's number one. And I don't know, every department reports to me, so I don't know which ones you're referring to from that standpoint. Thank you. Any more questions before we carry on with the agenda?
Well, I didn't know, Mayor. I was waiting until we got to the point where we can have a point of personal privilege, and I wanted to raise the issue that I think is very relevant, and perhaps ask a question that may be relevant to how we govern our city. The first issue I want to kind of raise, I thought online the agenda had some kind of presentation from Mr. Howard or his department. I see he's here. But what I would encourage, and I'm far from being one of the city managers who try to micromanage the department. That's been my mantra since I was elected, and I still abide by that. I don't think it's our job to micromanage departments. It's our job to set policy. And to that end, I would like either both you and Ms. Moore to look at how our 911 and 311 systems are functioning right now. I'm getting multiple complaints. I'm sure my colleagues are as well. The most recent one was I had a funeral of a 16-year-old, and a bunch of youngsters ran in there with guns, and people inside the funeral home tried to call 911 from their cell phones, from the office phone. And related to that, a park in your ward, Director Lewis, had a similar type situation, and people called and couldn't get anyone in 911. That's happened several times. It happened last week. Something is not going on correctly there. I've spoken both with Chief Helton and one of the assistant chiefs about this matter. It's on their radar screen. I'm set to try to meet with them, but I did tell them both that I'm a policymaker, that any of the management of the department comes from you and Bruce. So I would encourage you guys to look at that and do an objective assessment of how we are functioning as 911, because I'm having people and 311 call about both of those. Particularly 911, to call and there's a bunch of people shooting and you can't get anybody to answer the phone, and you call 3 or 4 times and you're still having trouble getting someone. I think we ought to look at that. And that's the first part I want to talk about. dealing with 911, and the most important part, I think, of that is how are we training them? What kind of training mechanism we have in place? I've heard complaints about the training. I would tell those people flat up, I can't do anything about that. I don't run departments. I help set policies. That's not my job. That's not my bailiwick. And back to the code enforcement, I think unfortunately for Mr. Howard and his department, I think a lot of us, we have a lot of newly elected board members. I'm not sure that all of us are fully educated about what represents a code violation. And I think, when Director Phillips brought up his ordinance about increasing our salary, one of our colleagues said, well, we need to increase the salary of code, and we're losing code folks and losing code folks. Well, I think part of that, and Director Howard can correct me if I'm wrong, I think part of that is we're having them respond to violations that are not code violations. They may be cosmetic. They may not look good, but they're not actually code violations. And I'm not saying, Mr. Howard, we need to have a presentation or a work session, but Bruce, Mayor, I think all of us need to have some information so we can have clarity of what represents a code violation, so we don't have our staff running around in circles looking at things that may not be code related, they may be public works related, but it's not the responsibility of our code officers. And as I mentioned a month ago, Mr. Moore, when Victor, Mr. Howard's predecessor, was at the head of that department, the biggest turnover rate, guys, at our city government was code enforcement officers. That was at that time 20% turnover rate. I think a part of it was pay. I think part of it was the work associated with the pay. I think another part of it was the confusion that sometimes emanates from us here, with us giving directives to department heads and staff that we know or are familiar with or have relationships with. So I think that could help them go a long way in terms of improving how they provide their services, and it can go a long way in terms of educating us. So we can know the difference between a code violation and something that's not aesthetically pleasing to my eyes, but it's not a code violation. And we have them out there investigating those kinds of things, Mayor, daily.
Yes, sir. And so, Director Richardson, three things. One, from the code enforcement standpoint, we are looking at raises for code enforcement officers. We've shared that briefly, but before we'll look into that in the proposed 2024 budget. As it relates to 311, we'll definitely look into that and get back with you. As it relates to 911, we are currently, as we've shared before, in the midst of hiring up. At one point in time, I believe we had a little over more than 30 vacancies. And so we're now got a new class in, and we hopefully we're keeping our fingers crossed that that'll get down to 10, and we believe that will address a lot of the issues. It's not a training issue, it's a staffing issue as well. And we are grateful that the city board has given us the ability to offer sign-on bonuses. We'll be able to issue those out, and we think that's going to really close the gap, and we've already seen the gap be closed. So thank you so much. Director Phillips?
Mayor, I wasn't finished with that.
Oh, I thought you.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
No. You still have the floor. I thought you.
I think everything that was fine and that was well, but I think that both when I met with our police chief and one of the assistant chiefs, they made recommendations for essentially for me to bring to the table. I told them I would defer to their expertise, and I would prefer but I would prefer that conversation is had with you and Mr. Moore as the administrators of the city. And the code part is not just a number. I think from an educational standpoint, I think we need to have something that's going to educate us collectively about what represents a code violation.
We'll do that. We'll have we'll have a policy discussion.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Director Phillips.
Yes,
And I want to, and Mr. Moore, remind me, because I know there was a policy discussion that we were considering for today. Is that different is what Director Richardson asking different from what Director Phillips and Director Webb was asking for? Just for clarity.
So they are different. One, from Director Phillips' standpoint, was the rental rights segment, and he wanted, and I'm not going to speak for you, but he wanted certain stakeholders to be a part of the conversation. And then from the Vice Mayor's perspective is, what can we do with our current ordinance? And Arkansas is it's a property rights state, so we are very limited. But is there anything we can do to put more teeth? I hate to use that phrase, but into our current statutes. And so they are different. So we visited with the city attorney on both of the issues, and I don't know.
Well, I think what'll probably be helpful, we'll just ask Director Howard, we'll start, because I know as you shared, the renters' rights, that's a little bit more complex. Maybe we'll just start with a policy discussion where Director Howard and his team can just kind of update us on the code enforcement in general, from how they enforce, what they enforce, and maybe that may be a good discussion.
And that's fine, Mayor, but I think that, and we've talked about this a lot. Usually every time I get a call from, let's say Director Ericott called about Tanglewood last week. We were already aware of it. We were on top of it. And it's just it's an issue of, and then the fire department, Chief Hubbard got involved, and Jamie got involved in planning, but it's a matter of what else can we do? And I don't have the answer, and that's why I lean to Tom to say, are there other things we can do that we're not doing right now? And I know members of his staff have proposed certain things, and I guess he's reviewing those, but so that's where we are.
All right, we'll take some time to revisit and come back with a solution to Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. And we did have on our agenda a presentation from Mr. Howard and his department, and up until to the time I came into this room, I was expecting them to be part of the policy discussion because it was on the agenda as late as this morning, or 11:30 or 12 o'clock. So I was fully expecting to raise those issues because they were on the agenda that we had online prior to us starting this meeting today. And I was somewhat saddened and disappointed, Bruce, Mayor, that they are not part of our policy discussion on the written agenda that I have that's before me, or the agenda that's online right now.
And Director Richardson, I'll take responsibility. We just we don't have anything yet to present that would strengthen what we're doing, and so it would have been just a conversation that with no real details. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Phillips, then Director Hines.
Thank you, Mayor. And this conversation is exactly where I was going. I wanted to inform the public, for those who was keeping up and reached out to me, that meeting was supposed to happen today, August 29th, but it's been rescheduled to get the right stakeholders involved. So that is going to happen as this discussion just occurred. Also let my colleagues know that I'll be reaching out to you to see if there's anyone you think needs to be involved in this discussion as it relates to ways that we can improve the living situation for our renters throughout the city to ensure the big country chateau situation doesn't happen again going forward. So y'all get an email from me on that. And then secondly, Mayor, I was going to ask about, I was talking to Director Warwick earlier, and I'm throwing you out there. And we were discussing things that we may have learned from the tornado recovery efforts. And I know we're currently in the process, or United Way is currently in the process of trying to get out those grants. So I was going to request that sometime in the future, nothing now, that after we kind of get updates on the grant situation, that we have a debriefing, if you will, from the city standpoint, like we were able to do X, Y, and Z. We also learned that we wasn't able to do A, B, and C, and these are things we need to go forward in case something like this happens going again.
Will do.
Thank you.
Director Hines?
Was that okay, Director Warwick, to mention your name? All right.
Yes, Mayor. Since 911's called up, I would like the KPI, key performance indicators for that department for month to date in the previous 3 months. So that would be month to date for August, July, June, and May, of the percent calls within 10 seconds answered and the percent calls within 20 seconds answered, which are the national standards that I think we had in this meeting. I'd like to see what those KPIs are.
Sure thing. Director Adcock?
Yes, since we're requesting things, I would like to know when 911 was removed from the police department and put into a separate department, and is it time to look at putting it back underneath the police department?
It was done 2 years ago, and the answer would be no. It's not an organizational issue. It's a staffing issue. But it was approximately 2 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And again, I want to share thank you to the board, because if you'll remember 3 months ago, we had a similar discussion. And at that point in time, we had close to 30 vacancies, and we're now down to 10. And so again, that's a credit to the board giving us that wiggle room to get those. And again, we haven't even issued the bonuses yet. We've been very aggressive, and it wasn't a need at that point in time. And we think to close this gap from, at one point we were at 30, we got 20 on, I believe, somewhere around there. And to get us to 10, we're going to now be able to do those bonuses. And so again, thank you to the board. All right. Any more questions before we continue on with the agenda? All right, the sales tax discussion. One of the things, I know we're coming up on the final sales tax discussion with Director Webb's ward tomorrow. I've been to every one of them except Ward 4 due to a previously scheduled event that was on the calendar before we scheduled these particular meetings. And I can tell you, we've had some really good conversations, really good feedback from the residents. We've definitely heard of some areas where we need to continue to make some tweaks, particularly in public infrastructure and public safety, and really excited about the next meeting tomorrow with Director Webb. Again, we know there are certain deadlines that we have to consider. And so as we shared last week, as Director Phillips asked what day should we prepare for if we do move forward for a November 13th? Do we need to be prepared for a vote on this week or next week? We're looking at, so just members of the board, the only person who has to, and we understand Labor Day weekend's coming up, again, I'm just revisiting the conversation we've had every week, is that the only people who really need to be here present is myself and the city attorney. And so if you'll just hold your calendar for somewhere around 8:30 a.m. on Friday. And if you cannot be here in person, you can do it online. Again, the only people who are required to be here in person is the city attorney and myself. But before we get to that, just want to continue to discuss through that. Any thoughts, questions as we continue to have these meetings?
With that, with the mayor's announcement, from a staffing standpoint, can we get a sense of who will be here or on Zoom on 8:30 on Friday?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I will query with the members of the board. I'll query with members of the board, and we'll figure out that again well before we make that decision. But going back to sales tax, Director Campiris?
Maybe I missed something, but on Friday, are we going to have a discussion? I mean, we're going to have Kathy's meeting, and then that'll be Wednesday, then we have Thursday, then Friday we come. When did we discuss all of our other thoughts and any changes we want to make? Is that going to occur?
We've been asking that every Tuesday, in which we've made. So if you have some more thoughts, please share with us. If you want to reach out to me outside of this meeting, that's fine as well.
Well, okay. I hope everybody comes Friday. I mean, I think it's important that we're in the room and we discuss this. I mean, is your anticipation we just come, vote, and walk out?
No, not at all.
I mean, I think this is, despite my normal behavior, I've been to these meetings, and
We've been grateful to see you at every. You've been at every meeting, Director Campiris.
So if I show up tomorrow, then I've got 100%.
You got 100%. I'm taking you out to dinner. Oh, that'll be number 6, right?
But I think this is the meetings are good. The part after the meeting are more important. That's when people really come up and really say, what do you think of this and that? And I want to hear because this is the people that your ward tomorrow. And I think it behooves us, if we're going to vote on something, that we have a detailed discussion about what's going on. And we talk about things that people have said and modifications we want to make or not make. I mean,
We'll have that.
Okay, but I would encourage everybody not to just, you and Tom and Bruce not be sitting here and everybody being someplace else. I think if we're going to do this, we need to do it all together and talk about it and see what we're going to do and be honest about it.
Yes, sir. Well, that being said, we'll leave Director Hines.
Oh, nothing. I was just going to say, I leave to go on a trip on Thursday, so I will try to phone in, but, like I said, my opinion hasn't changed on the sales tax, and I think doing it in November is too soon. So that hasn't changed, and neither has my non-support for putting this on the ballot for November. That's all I need to say.
Well, thank you for your consistent feedback. All right, we'll transition now into, again, we're looking forward to Director Webb's meeting tomorrow. And I believe Director Webb, you might make the announcement of the location, because I can't recall it right now. So
It's at 315 South Hughes, Christ, Little Rock.
Yes, ma'am. All right, we'll now transition. Want to try to get us out here no longer than an hour, a little less than an hour. So we'll now ask Brittany Nichols and James Owen to give us our presentation. And I have a few things after this.
Good afternoon, Mayor Scott and members of the Board of Directors.
Before you get started, are there printed copies?
I only have the slides that are up right there.
No,
We need to get some printed copies. Or
No, we don't. I don't.
No.
I don't. No.
board members, we'll get this email to you. Our apologies. We thought we had printed copies. My apologies. Carry on.
Thank you, Mayor.
But it's on your screen. And it's not many slides, so.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the Board of Directors. My name is James Owen, and I serve as Policy Advisor and Special Projects Manager for the city, and my colleague.
Brittany Nichols, I work in the Office of Sustainability.
We would like to take a brief minute to brief you on the energy savings performance contract with Solar Development and kind of give you some of the high points on this project that we've been working on for the better part of a year or more. Just as an introduction, and on the next slide, we're going to go through a quick introduction, some goals, the timeline of this project, so where we have been, where we are now, and where we are going. And then we're going to give you some context to think about this project, the approach that we're taking, and then we're going to close and answer any questions that you may have. So to introduce this, an energy savings performance contract with Solar Development, this is one project that essentially does two things. And so part one, I think it's best to think about this in terms of City Hall, right? So City Hall is an old building built in the early 1900s, and it is not the most energy efficient building, and that goes for some of the other buildings that the city maintains and owns. And so that first part, that energy savings performance contract, really focuses on energy efficient windows, right? So those old windows that may be single pane, making sure those are more energy efficient. Energy efficient lights, so using LED lights, that should save money over older lights, and HVAC. So this is really focused, that first part really focuses on the nuts and bolts of our buildings and making sure that the buildings that we own, that they're maintained, and that we are saving as much money as we can by using the most modern and energy efficient technology. And so that's the real simple version of part one. Part two concerns the energy that flows into all of those things, all of those lights, all of that HVAC. And it's a question of where we get our energy from. And so the second part, the solar development part, is we want to get more of our energy and increase our energy mix of solar energy. So instead of getting electricity that is derived initially from coal or natural gas or a dirtier fuel, we want to switch to a green fuel, and that's where the solar development part comes in. It's my firm belief, and if you talk to a lot of the experts in this industry, that if you're doing this right, you should save money in the medium and long term especially. So these are longer term contracts, but they should save you money, and this should give a cost savings to the city, and it should be a very fiscally responsible thing to do. The other thing that I want to note is that the Sustainability Commission, and I know the Sustainability Chair, Wes Pruitt, is here with us today. They did review this and gave us feedback on how we can make it better, and I especially want to give them credit for their idea to include workforce development as part of this project. So if we are taking on solar development, how can we also incorporate city employees learning about that green job and that and also taking that out to the community and using this as a way to encourage workforce development within the green energy space. So that's some introduction. And then the goals. So these goals also follow that part one and part two format. So in the 2022 State of the City, Mayor Scott laid out his vision and the city's vision that city operations should use 100% clean energy by 2030. And so this should, and the goals that we've incorporated into this RFP, should help us get it should be the centerpiece of this work. It should help us both increase the share of green energy that we have and that we use to power our city operations. And so that's that 85% clean energy adoption that is our goal. And it should also reduce the amount of energy that we are using. So the easiest way to become more green is to use less energy. Of the less energy that we are using, we want more of it, a greater share of it, to be green energy. And that's what this project would do. For the timeline, I'm going to turn it over to Brittany.
Thanks, James. So the Little Rock Sustainability Office was looped in very early, which we appreciate, of course. We had a meeting with Mayor and James and Director Honeywell a month or two after the State of the City. And shortly after that, we staked out this pathway that you see before you. Started this by taking a more technical deep dive and talked to Jeremiah Herman at the Arkansas Energy Office that explained to me what the state's limitations and regulations are for this. Good news is it's a lot more structured than it was 20 years ago. So this is a guaranteed energy savings project. We will be reimbursed if any efficiency measure that is installed does not perform to the way that it is funded to. So that's something important to note, is a guaranteed energy savings fiscally. So after talking to the Energy Office, took a deep dive in some of our membership organizations. We're members of the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network and ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, and figured out what other peer cities were doing and what frameworks were out there. And from there, we drafted the first version of the RFP. I also joined a few cohorts, national cohorts, one of which was the Department of Energy's Clean Energy to Communities cohort, implementing 100% clean energy. So this is one of those pathways that is identified from the federal government right now, saying like, hey, energy savings performance contracts, good for government, save money, good. So in those cohorts, compiled some proven strategies, accessed a lot of technical resources. And then from there, we took the draft to the Sustainability Commission, which, as you know, are 15 highly motivated, passionate, well-informed people that spend a lot of time helping us. We also spent a good amount of time setting our baseline for 2021. So I started meeting with Entergy Arkansas and met the new folks over at Summit Utilities to get that baseline information that went into the RFP. And then, of course, we edited final version, sent that to Mayor's office, went to procurement. This one? This one? Okay. So, of course, we have other sustainability goals, which y'all have heard. Recycling, increasing recycling across the community and in city operations, fleet electrification, all of that is still very much exciting and complementary, but this RFP was written with a big focus on our buildings. So we want to focus mainly on energy efficiency in city-owned buildings and clean energy. Something else to note is that we have enrolled in City Smart's Continuous Energy Improvement Program, which gives us help and has partnered me with the city of Fort Smith, who is also implementing employee incentives to try to get to that behavior modification that we need to sustain reduced energy. So we're going to get that help by doing capital projects in our buildings that will be spread out very evenly over 20 years probably, guaranteed savings, have clean energy, and our employees will be helping with that reduced energy consumption. And I just want to say that at the end of the day, you know, we've attended enough conferences and been a part of enough cohorts to know, like, the strategy is fairly simple when it comes to being sustainable. We've got to clean up the grid where we're getting our energy. We've got to have very efficient buildings or net zero buildings, and we've got to reduce our vehicle miles traveled. So that is at the core of this.
And so I just want to continue and talk about some of the benefits to this approach, right? So we've talked about the cost savings, and I just really want to hark on that and repeat, if we're doing this right, which we will do this right, this should save us money. And that's money that we can reinvest in other things and other projects as the board decides. I also just want to talk about, some of the positive health outcomes. So as we green our grid and get more energy from green sources, that decreases the particulate, the carbon matter in the air, which should lead to positive health outcomes. This is a small project, but it allows and it paves the way for other parts of our community to do this work as well. There is a great opportunity in workforce development to make sure that as these green jobs come online, as federal money from the Inflation Reduction Act and different other federal legislation comes on, that we have the workforce to seize those opportunities. It also improves Little Rock's standing among our peer cities on a national and regional level. So out of 100 cities that were ranked by ACEE, we were ranked 94th out of 100 cities. And on our scorecard, we got 6 points out of 100. And so doing this project and having this be kind of a centerpiece effort can help vault us up those scores, and also show our commitment and maybe help us get federal dollars like that, if we can show that we are committed to this work. Finally, I'll close out with, this is not something that is new or unproven. Fayetteville has developed solar. Clarksville, I think it was the first city to get their city operations at near 100 or at 100% clean energy. Hot Springs has a solar array, and North Little Rock recently announced one as well. So these are proven that they work, and there are both national, regional, and statewide municipalities that have taken an approach similar to what we're doing. And so with that, we've kind of told you where we've been, what we think, want to leave you with where we're going. So we have the RFP went out, it closed about a month ago, and we are in the selection phase. We are awaiting the scoring part of that proposal, but hope to have a vendor selected here in the next week or so. And so after that, we will go through contracting and continue with the procurement process. And then, as you see, what's next is we will bring that, if there are fiscal impacts, we will bring that back before you, and then there will be the implementation part. With that, we welcome any questions. Again, there's our info if you would like.
Thank you, James and Brittany. I know you all have been working on this since about 2022 and really vetted this process, but also want to share appreciation to the Sustainability Commission that's walked alongside you all, as well as with City Director Cappy Peck, who's been very attentive in all of those Sustainability Commission meetings. Director Adcock, and then Director Compures.
Yes, you talked about the savings, but I don't think you ever gave a dollar amount.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. We do not have a firm dollar amount right now because we're waiting on the pricing proposal for that each of the vendors submitted. So we tried to write this proposal, this request for proposals in a way where there were multiple ways that the vendors could meet the goals that we had. So there are a lot of different ways to increase your energy efficiency in buildings and a lot of different ways to increase your share of green energy that you have. And so we won't have those numbers until we actually select a pricing proposal.
And you're talking about all city buildings?
We're talking about all city buildings.
The resource centers?
Yes.
And all city buildings?
Yeah, so yes, ma'am. So the scope of this is anything that uses electricity that is part of city operations. And so we're focusing on those buildings first, because we think that's the low-hanging fruit, and that's what a lot of other cities have proven is a good approach.
What is the cost right now of our energy?
We know what our bill is. So we know, and that's not all energy. So we'll get that answer for you, but we do know what our certain billings are.
I know to look at any savings, we need to know what the cost is at this time before we look at what the savings is. So I would like to know what cost we're looking at.
Yes, ma'am. And so let me help out just a little bit. So you're definitely correct, Director Adcock. That plays a role, a part of this process. Again, this team has been working on this for a better part of a year and a half. Finance has been ultimately involved. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Moore early on as we kind of walk throughout this process because of the intricacies of how we do things here at the city. And assuming, again, if there are cost impacts that there's a need that we have to bring it to the board from that standpoint, we'll bring that. But more importantly, if we select someone, we see some cost savings from that standpoint. Mr. Moore encouraged, as well as our retired CFO, Sarah Linehan, is that we kind of overprotect ourselves. And so we'll have what you would call an owner's rep. That's kind of walking through those to make certain we get those savings from a finance standpoint, as well as a legal review because of all the other intricacies that we have with our bond finance and things of that nature. So definitely, that was great feedback. That's a part of the process. Just wanted to give you kudos.
Okay, I would assume that at the present time, Energy is our provider of our energy. Okay, have we looked at what this would do to the energy that we know here in Little Rock at this present time?
Yes, and that's a part of the process, what we would have to figure out once we select a vendor. So a lot of those, the reason why we're here today is to brief the board on what's been going on. And at the appropriate time, if we move forward, and that's, if we move forward, we can share more of those details, and that mainly because they're going through the procurement process right now. So we just haven't opened up the bids and from that standpoint.
Well, I would like to know what impact it's going to have on energy if we pull all of our buildings at one time away from them.
Yes, ma'am. And that's a part of the process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Campiris, then Director Richardson.
Well, thank you for your comments. If I understand you, this is all energy that's obtained from shields on top of buildings, is that right?
It could be. The proposals that we solicited, there are many ways to do it. And so one option is called a power purchase agreement, where someone else builds the solar array and we buy that power at a rate. And so they actually own it. There is another option or possibility that could be out there where the city were to own and operate a solar panel or a solar array. There's another option that the city could put solar panels on all buildings, or some buildings, the buildings that had a lot of sunlight. So we tried to write this proposal in a way where we were not being prescriptive in saying this is the only way that we can do it. We wanted the private sector through joint ventures and other things to get creative and bring us back those proposals.
But the energy that you want to achieve to light, heat, cool our buildings is solar.
Yes, we want to get electricity. It's all based off electrification. So we want the electricity that we buy that comes through the power lines and into our buildings to come from green sources. And one of those green sources is solar. And we've identified Arkansas has a lot of solar potential. As we know, it was just very hot and we haven't had much rain for a couple weeks. So solar is a really good option for Arkansas.
Well, I would encourage you before we signed anything with a vendor interestingly, a week ago, I was invited to listen to a discussion of what the Clinton Library is going to do for energy conservation with their new building. And they are working with Bernhardt, who is a local person, on, I think, geothermal. And this is not theoretical or something. They're doing it. And at the Zoom conference, Ed Tinsley, who presented, talked about what could happen, and then people from the veterinary and dental school in Heifer were there and are also interested in doing it. And there's a question of whether the new Symphony building can do it or not. So they're developing an energy district right there. And so they said to me, do you think the city would be interested in this? And I said, yeah, when you get some more facts about it, tell us how it would apply to the city. And if we're going to do something, if there's another option available, and that's not to say what y'all haven't worked on is a viable option, but this is something that's going to happen and that we can be part of. So before we sign a contract, I hope that you would sit down and talk with Ed Tinsley at Bernhardt and see how we can work with what's going to be an ongoing project right down the street from us. And
Director Capires, just because I want to be helpful and we can talk offline, we agree with everything that you're sharing, and I think there are a lot of opportunities within the network that what you're discussing, and so I think it would just be best that we will definitely follow those instructions in looking into it.
I appreciate it.
Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. Brittany, James, thank you for your presentation. Mayor, I think that this, while saving money, that's self-explanatory. We all understand that. But I think, James, a couple of things you said to me that really rang my bell was the workforce development opportunities. And I think Mayor Bruce and fellow board members, this is one of the unique opportunities that I think that we have, that we can not only improve, we can have infrastructure revitalization, but we can have human capital revitalization. It was an impetus of a day ordinance that I sponsored that disconnected adults and youth, that the final year of the Obama administration, they changed the category to opportunity youth to have an urban green job corps. And we partner with the workforce services, we partner with the Office of Reentry, we partner with our community-based partnerships, because unfortunately there are certain parts of our city, guys, where the unemployment rate rivals that during the Great Depression. That's reality. But I think this is an opportunity where we can deliberately, Mayor, and conceptually develop a framework that targets the development of an urban green job corps. We're doing infrastructure revitalization, human capital revitalization. We're improving our people, we're employing our people, and we're saving money doing this at the same time. So I just want to give you heads up that I really appreciate that. And I think that's, I don't know at what depth you guys have talked about that or explored that. Dean, I don't know if Ed even mentioned that as part of his presentation or conversation when you guys had, but the whole development of an urban green job corps.
That's a great idea, Director.
Dig that, Mayor. I mean, we'd be number one. We wouldn't be 94th on that, James. We'd be number one. And considering the fact that we can get the resources, Mayor, maybe identify federal resources or state resources, or Dean, even private resources that would invest in that population who sometimes, for some reason, intentionally or unintentionally, are left out. We got an urban green job corps in Little Rock, Arkansas, and we can expand that beyond, Joan, government-owned buildings. We can look at, Director Howard, some of our UV structures that are in some of the areas of our city where we're having the most social ills. And I think, Bruce, about 5 years ago when I asked for a report, Director Miller, I think the more UV structures, there are more UV structures, condemnations and demolitions in wards 1 and 2. I think you're number one and number two. No pun intended. But imagine if we targeted those areas and targeted those homes that are on UV structures list and targeted the people who live in those areas to help bring those homes back to life, bring that community back to life, bring those people back to life. They take ownership because they're building their own community. They take ownership because we're providing opportunities for affordable home ownership, because we know about the disproportionate number of rentals in different parts of our city. And Virgil, I think you and I may lead those as well, my friend, because we represent the oldest parts of the city. And the part of my award that you picked up doing the reboundary, doing the district redrawing of the boundaries, but the notion of an urban green job corps, man, let that resonate for a minute. And let that expand beyond buildings, Dean, that we're in, that we're talking about that the city own. Let's figure out a way that we can do it legally, Tom. Look at some of these structures that are on Director Howard's UV list. Boarded up homes, now we're having trouble getting squatters out. Our code enforcement can't go remove them. We're having people that are squatting in some of these UV structures that are in places of our community where we have the most social ills, unfortunately. And I think, I'm not the smartest one of it, but I think they go hand in hand. I think one causes the other, but an urban green job corps, imagine how we could connect that to development of community gardens, how we connect that to LED lighting, provision of LED lighting. We can build a workforce of people who are, they're opportunity youth now, they're not disconnected in youth now, Mayor. But if we can look at that from that standpoint and make that a reality, and I appreciate you mentioning that as an opportunity. I hope that you're serious about it. I hope you guys are putting a lot of energy into it and identifying the resource, because I think that's a wonderful, wonderful avenue for us to stand out and improve our infrastructure and our people at the same time. Check that out, Antoine.
Thank you, Director Richardson, and really appreciate that feedback and totally agree with you. Director Wyatt?
Thank you, Mayor. With the RFPs that we're expecting to get in, will that also encompass potentially retrofitting some of the buildings in order to increase the savings? Or will it strictly be a process to provide energy?
So it will be it will be a patchwork cloth of different things depending on what different buildings need. I use windows, lights, and HVAC as examples because those are some of the things that are likely low-hanging fruit. But I think it's, and Brittany can speak more to this, but going through and doing energy audits on different buildings. So I know we've done some preliminary ones in places like the fire training center, that is just a big building envelope, use a lot of energy. And so how could we maybe seal up some of those rooms that we don't need all the time and make them energy efficient when they're not in use, things like that. And so it's very dependent on each building. And so each building may be its own, may need different solutions, but things like lights and windows are some of those.
It seems to me that we might have some cost outside of whatever the process is that we determine we want to seek energy from for retrofitting buildings.
So Director Wyrick, again, we're not at a place because we don't have the RFPs and to look at things. If there is a need, clearly there's a cost impact that subjugates us to come before the board, we will. But to answer your question directly, this will be a very comprehensive energy efficiency audit and or implementation of all of our buildings. So everything you can think of, the answer is yes.
You don't know what I'm thinking. I might be thinking about something.
It's nuts and bolts, right?
Well, that kind of goes to nuts and bolts. But it just appears to me that, there could be different solutions for different buildings due to retrofitting. And the example you gave was a really good example of how it might be a lot of expense to save money. So anyway, I'm glad we're doing audits in all those locations and we're looking at all that. It may be that we can implement some buildings to save money, but other buildings, we've got to go the traditional way or a different way. So just kind of hit me as to, that could be really big, a lot of cost in order to save some money. So I look forward to the information that we're going to get.
And
And thank you so much, Director Wyrick. That being said, we're coming close on the time. We got a few, thank you, James and Brittany,
Do you want this?
and for all the work that you guys have done.
thank you for the opportunity.
Just a few updates. I shared this with Director Hines. He had to exit. As we've shared before, the CAFR and the audit, we did receive an extension from GFOA where we receive our awards. They gave us an extension, so I'm just regurgitating something we said a few weeks ago. That extension was September 29th. We're actually going to come in a little early. It's going to be set, the board will see that it'll be submitted September the 12th. So I just wanted to share that. And then members of the board, if you recall, we had a policy discussion about Public Safety Commission. Director Campuris asked for some information or research done in other cities that have public safety commissions and citizen review boards and all that they like. We have citizen review board. We're looking to do a public safety commission. Director Campuris encouraged us to go before the CYF. That group will go before CYF in early September, and then we'll come back to the board with that ordinance. But also before the ordinance, Director Campuris, you'll have that memo as well. All right. Any questions? If not, we'll have somewhat of an early evening. Director Adcock.
Yes. On the Friday morning meeting, would the public be allowed to attend that meeting also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Nothing was said about that, so I wanted to make sure that they understood that if they would like to attend, that we would be here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Meeting adjourned.